Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were three of us in this marriage.
She was a girl destined for a crown. But one secret bracelet shattered everything. This is the untold truth of Princess Diana's royal marriage, the hidden betrayal that rocked the monarchy, and the tragic ending no one saw coming. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will change how you see the royal family forever. Diana meets Charles, the unexpected beginning. Picture this: November 1977, a sprawling English estate shrouded in autumn mist. A 16-year-old girl stands in a plowed field, her Wellington boots caked with mud, completely unaware that the man walking toward her will change her life and break her heart in ways she could never imagine. When Prince Charles first laid eyes on Diana Spencer, she wasn't draped in silk or diamonds. She was simply a teenager at a shooting party, the younger sister of his current girlfriend, Sarah. But something about her caught his attention. Perhaps it was her infectious laugh that rang out across the countryside, or the way she moved with an unstudied grace that no finishing school could teach. I remember thinking what a very jolly and amusing and attractive 16-year-old she was, Charles would later recall. But let's pause here, because those words, seemingly innocent, mask a troubling reality. He was 29, she was 16. In any other context, we'd raise eyebrows. But in the rarefied world of British aristocracy, such age gaps were overlooked, even encouraged. The gallery at Althorpe House became their secret meeting place that day. Diana, playing tour guide in her ancestral home, showed Charles the portraits of her Spencer ancestors, warriors, politicians, and courtiers who had served kings and queens for centuries. Neither of them knew that she would one day join their ranks in the most spectacular and tragic way possible. But here's where fate plays its cruel hand. Charles was dating Diana's sister Sarah. The Spencer sisters couldn't have been more different. Sarah, worldly and confident. Diana, innocent and idealistic. When Sarah publicly declared she wasn't in love with Charles, effectively ending their relationship, she unknowingly set the stage for one of history's most watched romances. 3 years waiting. How they came together. What happens when destiny keeps two people apart? For Charles and Diana, the answer was 3 years of near misses and what-ifs. After their initial encounter, they existed in parallel worlds. He, the eternal bachelor prince. She, the young woman growing up in the shadow of her sister's former romance. Then came the summer of 1980. Imagine the scene, a weekend house party, the kind where the British upper class gathered to shoot gossip and forge alliances. Diana, now 19, found herself seated on a bale of hay next to Charles. But this wasn't a moment of joy. Lord Mountbatten, Charles's beloved great-uncle and mentor, had just been assassinated by the IRA. "You look so sad when you walked up the aisle at the funeral," Diana told him. Her blue eyes filled with genuine compassion. "It was the most tragic thing I've ever seen. My heart bled for you when I watched it. I thought, it's wrong. You are lonely. You should be with somebody to look after you." Those words, simple, heartfelt, unguarded, pierced through Charles's carefully constructed royal armor. Here was someone who saw not the Prince of Wales, but a grieving nephew. In that moment of shared humanity, something shifted. Charles began calling her, inviting her to the opera, to intimate dinners, to Balmoral, the royal family Scottish sanctuary where outsiders rarely ventured. But pay attention to the timeline here, because it matters. Their courtship lasted just 6 months. 6 months from that conversation on the hay bale to a proposal. In royal terms, that's lightning speed. In human terms, it's barely enough time to know someone's favorite breakfast cereal, let alone their deepest fears and dreams. But what Diana didn't know was that Charles's heart was already tied to someone else. Who? Stay with me, because this changes everything. The proposal that changed royal history. February 3rd, 1981, Windsor Castle. Prince Charles had rehearsed this moment, but nothing could prepare him for what happened next. In the nursery of all places, surrounded by rocking horses and childhood memories, he asked Diana to be his wife. But here's the detail that history often forgets. He proposed just before she was leaving for a trip to Australia with her mother. "I wanted to give her time to think about it," Charles would later say. But Diana, she accepted immediately. No hesitation. No request for time. Just a breathless yes from a 19-year-old girl who thought she was living a fairy tale. What Diana didn't know, what she wouldn't discover until days before the wedding, was that Charles had already given a bracelet to another woman, engraved with the initials G and F for Gladys and Fred. The pet names Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles called each other. When Diana found that bracelet, she later admitted, "I went upstairs, had lunch with my sisters who were there, and I said, I can't marry him. I can't do this. This is absolutely unbelievable." But the machinery of a royal wedding had already begun to turn. The date was set July 29, 1981. The venue chosen, St. Paul's Cathedral. Its dome large enough to accommodate the spectacle the world demanded. The dress commissioned, a secret so closely guarded that its designers worked behind locked doors with the curtains drawn. Well, bad luck, Dutch, her sisters told her when she confessed her doubts. Your face is on the tea towels, so you're too late to chicken out. Stay with us, because what happened next would captivate 750 million viewers worldwide, while hiding a truth so painful that it would take years to fully emerge. Princess Diana's wedding, a royal fairy tale. July 29, 1981. London awakened to a fairy tale, or so it seemed. From before dawn, crowds lined the streets, some having camped for days to secure their spot. Union Jacks fluttered like butterflies in the summer breeze. The air itself seemed to shimmer with anticipation. Inside Clarence's house, a 20-year-old Diana Spencer stared at her reflection. The dress, oh, that dress, 25 feet of ivory silk taffeta train, 10,000 mother-of-pearl sequins, antique lace that once belonged to Queen Mary. It weighed 40 pounds. Later, Diana would say it made her feel like she was gift-wrapped for Charles, a present to be unwrapped. But listen closely to what happened in those final moments before she left for the cathedral. Diana's chief bridesmaid, Lady Sarah Armstrong Jones, whispered, "You look beautiful." Diana's response, "I feel like a lamb to the slaughter." The procession to St. Paul's took on an almost dreamlike quality. In the glass coach, Diana waved at crowds, but inside, her hands were shaking. The Spencer family tiara, the same one her sisters had worn at their weddings, felt heavy on her head. Every bump in the road reminded her of the weight she was about to carry. At the altar, Charles waited in his naval commander uniform, the blue bringing out his eyes, the same eyes that had looked at Camilla Parker Bowles just days before when he'd given her that bracelet. As Diana walked the 650-foot aisle, her father Earl Spencer by her side, despite his recent stroke, 3,500 guests held their breath. The Archbishop of Canterbury spoke of fairy tales coming true, but fairy tales, as we know, often have dark undertones. Then came the vows, and the mistakes that would later seem like omens. Diana called him Philip Charles Arthur George instead of Charles Philip Arthur George. Charles promised her his goods instead of worldly goods. Were these simple nerves, or was something deeper at play? If you think the wedding was a fairy tale ending, think again. What Diana found on the royal yacht would break her heart forever. Royal honeymoon secrets. Diana's hidden tears. The royal yacht Britannia cut through the Mediterranean like a floating palace, carrying the newlyweds on what should have been 3 months of bliss. But in her cabin, Diana discovered photos of Camilla tucked into Charles's diary. On his cufflinks, engraved CNC, Camilla and Charles. Even here, in the middle of the ocean, the ghost of another woman haunted their marriage. I was devastated. Diana would later reveal, "I remember being so in love with my husband that I couldn't take my eyes off him. I just absolutely thought I was the luckiest girl in the world. He was going to look after me. Well, I was wrong on that." Charles, meanwhile, seemed oblivious to his bride's distress. He brought along his books, heavy philosophical tomes by Lawrence van der Post. While Diana sunbathed on deck, desperate for his attention, Charles retreated into literature and long, solitary walks. The crew of the Britannia, sworn to secrecy, witnessed a peculiar sight of a honeymoon with a bride often dined alone. By the time they reached Balmoral for the final leg of their honeymoon, the cracks were showing. Diana, young and vibrant, found herself trapped in a Victorian time capsule where dinner conversations revolved around stalking deer and the bloodlines of horses. She was a modern woman thrust into an ancient world, and the culture shock was overwhelming. What comes next may surprise you, because it was during these darkest moments that Diana made a discovery that would temporarily bridge the growing chasm between her and Charles. William and Harry. Joy couldn't save the marriage. The announcement came with typical royal understatement. The Princess of Wales is expecting a child. But behind palace walls, Diana was struggling. Morning sickness hit her like a tidal wave, and with it came a crushing realization. She was alone in this marriage, pregnant and desperately unhappy. June 21st, 1982. The Lindo wing of St. Mary's Hospital became the most watched building in the world. After 16 hours of labor, Diana gave birth to William Arthur Philip Lewis. Charles was there, the first royal father to witness his child's birth. And for a moment, just a moment, they were simply two parents marveling at their son. I was so thrilled and excited, Charles wrote to friends. I could hardly believe it when I first held him. He has a wisp of fair hair, blue eyes, and sort of a Welsh look about him. But even this joy was tainted. When Charles first saw William, his reported reaction was, "Oh God, it's a boy," followed by, "And he's even got red hair." Diana never forgot those words, filing them away with all the other small cruelties that were accumulating like stones in her heart. 2 years later, when Harry arrived on September 15th, 1984, Charles's disappointment was even more pronounced. He'd wanted a girl. When he saw Harry's red hair, a Spencer trait, he allegedly turned to Diana and said, "Oh, God, it's a boy. And he's even got rusty hair." Then he left to play polo. Something inside me closed off. Diana later confessed. By then I knew he had gone back to his lady. And here's the twist you've been waiting for. The other woman who would haunt Diana's marriage from day one. Camilla Parker Bowles, the other woman. Let's talk about the ghost that haunted this marriage from day one. Camilla Parker Bowles, born Camilla Shand. She had met Charles in 1971 at a polo match. Legend has it that her opening line was, "My great-grandmother was a mistress of your great-great-grandfather. I feel we have something in common." Camilla was everything Diana wasn't. Older, worldly, comfortable in her own skin. She laughed at Charles's jokes, shared his love of hunting, and never made him feel inadequate, while Diana needed constant reassurance. Camilla offered uncomplicated companionship. She had married Andrew Parker Bowles in 1973, when Charles was away on naval duty, but their connection never truly ended. The most dramatic confrontation came in 1989. Picture the scene, a 40th birthday party for Camilla's sister. Diana, by now wise to the affair, decided to face her rival, finding Charles and Camilla deep in conversation with another guest. Diana waited. When the other person left, she made her move. "I know what's going on between you and Charles, and I just want you to know that," Diana said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "You've got everything you ever wanted," Camilla replied. "You've got all the men in the world to fall in love with you, and you've got 2 beautiful children. What more do you want?" "I want my husband," Diana shot back. The conversation that followed was polite, terribly British, and devastating. It solved nothing. Charles continued to seek solace with Camilla, and Diana began to realize that she wasn't fighting for her marriage. She was fighting a ghost, a history, a love that predated her and would outlast her. Royal marriage war. Private pain goes public. By the late 1980s, the fairy tale had become a horror show. Charles and Diana could barely stand being in the same room. Royal tours became exercises in barely concealed hostility. The press, once charmed by the young princess, now sensed blood in the water. The breaking point came with 2 explosive revelations. First, the Squidgygate tapes, a recorded phone conversation between Diana and her close friend James Gilby, where he called her Squidgy 53 times, and she poured out her heart about her miserable marriage. Then came Camillagate, an intimate phone conversation between Charles and Camilla so explicit that newspapers could only print edited versions. "I'll just live inside your trousers," Camilla had said to Charles. His response was even more shocking, expressing a desire to be her tampon. The British public, raised on propriety and reserve, was horrified. Their future king, talking like a lovesick teenager to a married woman while his wife raised his children. It was too much. Diana, meanwhile, gave the interview that would seal their fate. November 20th, 1995. BBC's Panorama. 23 million viewers. Martin Bashir's questions were gentle, but Diana's answers were devastating. There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded, she said, delivering a line that would echo through history. But she went further, questioning Charles's fitness to be king, admitting to her own affair with James Hewitt, and positioning herself as a victim of an uncaring royal establishment. The Queen, watching from Buckingham Palace, made her decision that night. The fairy tale was over. Diana and Charles divorce. The end of love. December 20th, 1995. The Queen's letter arrived at both Kensington Palace and Highgrove House. The message was clear. Divorce, and divorce quickly. For the first time since Henry VIII, an heir to the throne would divorce. The negotiations were brutal. Diana fought to keep her HRH title, Her Royal Highness, the style that guaranteed bows and curtsies, that marked her as royal rather than merely aristocratic. She lost. They took my HRH away, she told friends, but they can't take away my children or the public's love. The financial settlement was equally complex. Diana received a lump sum of £17 million, plus £400,000 annually for her office. She kept her apartment at Kensington Palace and access to the royal jets. But what price could be put on a broken dream? August 28, 1996. The decree absolute was issued. Charles and Diana were no longer husband and wife. In a cruel twist of timing, exactly 1 year and 3 days later, Diana would be dead. You might think divorce gave Diana peace, but what happened next would shock the world even more. Life after divorce. Diana's search for happiness. Freedom suited Diana. Without the suffocating protocol of royal life, she blossomed. Her relationship with heart surgeon Hasnat Khan, whom she called Mr. Wonderful, showed her what love without cameras could feel like. For 2 years, they met in secret, Diana sometimes wearing a dark wig to avoid recognition. He was the love of my life, she told friends. But Khan, a devout Muslim, couldn't handle the scrutiny that came with dating the world's most famous woman. When their relationship ended in summer 1997, Diana was heartbroken. Enter Dodi Fayed, playboy, film producer, and son of billionaire Mohammed Al Fayed. Their whirlwind romance played out on the deck of his yacht, the Jonicle, as paparazzi lenses captured every kiss, every embrace. Was it love or rebound? We'll never know. August 30th, 1997. The Ritz Hotel, Paris. Diana and Dodi tried to escape the photographers who had followed them all day. Their driver, Henri Paul, had been drinking. The Mercedes sped into the Pont El Alma tunnel at 65 miles per hour. 13 pillars lined the tunnel. They hit the 13th. The tragic death of Princess Diana in Paris. 4 a.m., August 31st, 1997. Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital, Paris. The girl who walked down the aisle at St. Paul's Cathedral 16 years earlier was pronounced dead. She was 36 years old. Charles flew to Paris on a royal jet to bring her home. The man who had struggled to love her in life was devastated by her death. At the airport, he insisted her coffin be treated with full royal honors, overruling courtiers who pointed out she was no longer HRH. The funeral became Diana's final triumph. 2 billion people watched worldwide. Elton John sang Candle in the Wind, rewritten for his friend. Young William and Harry walked behind their mother's coffin, their heads bowed, their futures forever changed. But perhaps the most poignant moment came from Charles himself. He wore a navy suit to the funeral, not the traditional black, because Diana had always said he looked best in navy. It was a small gesture, noticed by few, but it spoke volumes. In death, he gave her the consideration that had eluded them in life. The story of Charles and Diana reminds us that fairy tales written by human hands are destined to show their flaws. They met when she was too young to know herself, and he was too set in his ways to change. They married in front of the world, but lived their truth in shadows. They created 2 princes, but couldn't create a lasting love. Today, Charles is king, married to Camilla. William and Harry carry their mother's legacy forward, each in their own way. And Diana? She remains forever young in our collective memory. The princess who dared to show that even royalty could suffer, could fail, could be gloriously, messily human. In the end, perhaps that's the real fairy tale. Not the perfect princess in the perfect palace, but the woman who survived the shattering of her dreams and emerged, however briefly, into her own light. She showed us that sometimes the most courageous thing isn't to maintain the illusion, but to admit when the story needs a different ending. Her last summer was spent laughing on a yacht, free from the chains of a loveless marriage. And maybe, just maybe, that's the ending she would have chosen. Not happily ever after, but happily ever authentic. The crown jewels couldn't buy her happiness. The palace walls couldn't protect her heart. But in her 36 years, Diana Spencer transformed from a kindergarten teacher to a global icon who changed how we see royalty, charity, and the courage to admit when love isn't enough. And that transformation, that's the real magic. That's the story worth telling. What do you think Diana's life would have been like if she had never married Charles? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to uncover more royal secrets, don't miss our next video, Camilla's biggest royal scandal finally revealed. Or click on the hidden letter that shook the royal family. Both are on your screen now. Choose your royal mystery and we'll see you there.